we go. Oh, water as well.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for coming for the announcement of the new and 12th Archbishop of Westminster.
12th.
You will all have the press release, so you'll have the details. It shouldn't be a surprise. Some of you might even have found out before, but who knows. Anyways, I will pass over to the Cardinal to say a few words and to introduce the new Archbishop. Thank you, Father.
Morning, everybody. You're very welcome here. This moment reminds me of a very similar moment 16 years ago when I was in Bishop Richard's place and Cardinal Hume welcomed you and introduced me to you. So now it's my turn, 16 years later, to welcome Bishop Richard, to say how pleased we are in the diocese to be receiving him as our new Archbishop, and I know he will bring such experience and practical wisdom to the life of the diocese and to our mission and to our sustaining ourselves in the life of Christ. I think I mentioned in this short statement that Bishop Richard was actually ordained a bishop in Westminster Cathedral, so I'm able to say to him, Bishop Richard, welcome back. You're most welcome.
Thank you. Oh,
Deacon Stacy.
yes. Cardinal Vincent, thank you for your kind words of welcome. As you said, it's in the cathedral here at Westminster that I was ordained a bishop, and I've just spent a little bit of time in the chapel here in the house, where in fact I vested for that ordination. So it's rather lovely to be there this morning. I know you've had a little bit of a resume about me, but I'd just like to fill it in a bit, if that's all right, give you a little bit of info. Ordained in '82 for the Archdiocese of Southwark, the other side of the river, where you have the good view of the north side of the river, and served there for a good number of years, including some years in parish ministry, some work in canon law, in the marriage tribunal there, did 27 years in the marriage tribunal. And for 17 years of my time in Southwark was first the Archbishop of Southwark's private secretary. So I understand a little of Father Alexander's life as the private secretary here. And then as the Vicar General of that diocese, before being appointed by Pope Benedict as the Bishop of the Armed Forces. The experience in the diocese brought me very much into contact with hospital ministry, with marriage and family life, and particularly in connection with the hospital ministry, issues surrounding mental health. And so as a very new bishop, I did some work then in that field of mental health with a project we were running nationally at the time. And that was a very wonderful thing to be involved with that. With the armed forces, a lot of travel. Everywhere we were, I went. So the South Atlantic, I went to Afghanistan during the conflict there. I was taken to sea, turned upside down in aeroplanes, all those kinds of things that happen to you in that fascinating role. And then for the last 10 years now in the Diocese of Arundel and Brighton. Arundel and Brighton is geographically a fair size, but in every other aspect, about a third of the size of the Diocese of Westminster. So my first task here is to get to know everybody. As a Southwark priest, I did my priestly formation at St John's Seminary at Wonersh, where a lot of the Arundel and Brighton men also trained. Very different here, because the Westminster priests tended to go to a different seminary. So my first task is to get to know priests and people, to get to know schools, to get to know the life of this wonderful diocese here in Westminster. On the national front, the national side of things, my work in the Bishops' Conference has consistently been in the area of social justice. So for the last little while I've been chairing the Department for Social Justice at the Bishops' Conference, with a particular concern for prisons. I've been privileged to be able to meet with a number of prisons ministers over the last few years and to work with our chaplains across the prison estate nationally. Been involved with the work of PACT, the Prisoner Device Care Trust, and kind of fostering the development of the response to the spiritual needs of those who find themselves in the criminal justice system. Particular interest in restorative justice and the possibilities that that can open up for a new approach to criminal justice. As you've seen from the CV, I also chair the Plater Trust, something I took over from Cardinal Vincent a few years ago, and Bishop Paul here in the room with us is one of the trustees with me of that trust. And Plater it's a wonderful organisation giving grants to organisations, Catholic and otherwise, that are involved in the work of social justice. And so it's a great privilege to be involved with that. So I bring, I hope, I think, a fair bit of experience over the years, ordained in '82, so ordained a good number of years now, and a variety of diocesan experience too, in a number of different settings. In the Diocese of Arundel and Brighton, we're blessed with some wonderful schools, and I've taken a particular interest in the work of our schools over the years I've been there, and I look forward to getting involved with the schools here too. Since 11 o'clock this morning, my phone has not stopped buzzing. I've turned it off to come in here. It's been buzzing constantly with messages from brother bishops and others assuring me of prayers, and I'm very grateful for that wonderful support. For myself, I try my best to exercise my ministry out of a place of prayer, and that's fostered by a very close link to monastic houses in this country. The Benedictines in Scotland at Pluscarden Abbey, and also the Carthusian monastery in my present diocese, or what was my diocese, in Arundel and Brighton. And the Carthusians have been great friends to me, and I think I bring something, or I hope I bring something of that spirit of prayer to the ministry that the Lord has given me. So since knowing about this appointment, life, I'll be honest with you, has been a little surreal. I'm pinching myself rather a lot, realizing just what's happening. And it's going to be a very big change. I'm very grateful, massively grateful for the great trust that Pope Leo has placed in me. And I pray that I'll be able to live up to that trust and continue the great work of the Church. I think we're at an interesting moment in the life of the Church in this country. We're seeing a great interest in the life of the gospel for perhaps a whole variety of reasons. But I think the gospel for me is, the following of the gospel is the most wonderful adventure. Just thinking of these last few days, I would never have thought of this appointment, and yet the Lord has chosen me for it. The following of Christ is an adventure, and I'm sure that together with the priests and people of Westminster, we'll be able to explore that adventure together and walk together as we seek to bring to the world around us the wonderful message that is the gospel of Christ. So I think that's probably enough from me. Because I don't know you yet, I'm going to ask Alexander here to just help with any questions that you might feel you want to ask.
Sure. Okay, if you could just raise your hand, and when I point to you, whatever, just say who you are, where you're from. That's fine. Ruth.
Hello.
We're great fans of the Plater Trust.
Yeah, yes.
And congratulations on your appointment. I just wondered what your views on the synodal pathway and how you plan to take the synodal process
Thank you. We've some experience of this in Arundel and Brighton, but perhaps if I can talk about that, it'll give a sense of where I think we might be able to go. So, for the last 8 years or so in Arundel and Brighton, we've been implementing in a steady and gentle way a new plan for the diocese. And my approach to that was to go round to the various deaneries in the diocese. I spoke to priests and people. This is before COVID, so a few years ago. And I gave them some questions. And I said, I want you to go away and reflect on these. I'm coming back in a few months' time, and I'm just going to sit and listen. So I went round again, and I sat and listened. And then I went away and wrote some stuff. And I went back to the deaneries, and I visited them all again. Rather, perhaps looking back on it now, as people have said to me, without realizing it at the time, that was synodal. Because I was really keen to listen to people's reflections on where we were as the church in that diocese, to listen to their hopes, their aspirations, and where they felt we needed to travel. COVID then got in the way, and so post-COVID, I went round all our deaneries twice again. Again, conversations, listening, encouraging people to communicate with one another and build relationships across our different communities. And that's now produced the plan that we've been beginning to put into place in the Diocese of Arundel and Brighton. So that journey of reflection, conversation and relationship is really important. And I think it's not just about being synodal, it's also about a word that comes from the Second Vatican Council, which is subsidiarity, which is recognizing that what you can do at local level, you do at local level, incorporating into that where possible, work with our sister churches, and work into faith as well. We've got particular experience in one part of Surrey where a lot of wonderful work is going on in social outreach with the different faith communities in that part of the diocese. And it's been wonderful to see that and experience it. And I would hope and be sure that those kinds of conversations, that building of those relationships, building on the relationships that are already here in the diocese, is something that we can continue into the future.
Thank you. Catherine.
Where are you? Oh, you're over there.
I was looking at your thoughts when you began at Arundel and Brighton, and you said there, this was in 2015, that prayer, formation and mission are central to the life of the diocese. Would you say the same is true for how things begin here in Westminster? And also, what for you is mission? Are you talking about mission to Catholics, or do you see your role now as being beyond just Catholics who want to reach out to others? How much of an evangelizer are you going to be?
Right, okay. Gosh, right. Prayer, formation, mission, I think, are central to the life of the church, full stop, if you like. I think that's a universal truth. But coming back to what I said about subsidiarity and that need for relationships, the way that's exercised is going to be different in different settings. So the settings in the Diocese of Westminster that I've yet to get to know will be somewhat different to those in Arundel and Brighton. And even thinking of Arundel and Brighton, the way we do things in Sussex is very different to Surrey. Very different communities. So you need that, if you like, adaptability. You need to be a little agile, I suppose, is the word I find myself using quite often, in the way that you approach these things. Without prayer, we can do nothing as a Christian community. So everything must start there. That's the foundation. My sense is that everybody is involved, when talking about this word mission, everybody is involved in the mission of the church. That's about outreach in terms of the preaching of the gospel, which must almost always be a priority for the church. It's also about outreach to our brothers and sisters in the other Christian communities, to those who are exploring their way in other faiths, and seeing how we can work together, relate together. And I think the work of social justice is a place where that can happen to great effect. So when I'm thinking mission, it's at a number of different levels. There's the mission ad intra, the mission to one another within the community, and then how we take that beyond and work with others in society. It's something we see actually in the Plato Trust is a very good example of this, because we're giving grants to all sorts of groups of people, all of them in different ways expressing what we find in Catholic social teaching. There's that sense of collaboration and relationship. And that experience, I've been only chair of Plato for relatively few years, but that experience has taught me quite a lot. And so I'd want to see that sense going forward. In terms of the formation piece, again, I come back to that word adventure. Our journey with Christ is, for me, something just so wonderful and extraordinary in a sense. And we can always go deeper. There's always something new to reflect on, something new to learn and explore. And the deeper we grow in that relationship, the more effective we can be in the mission. That's how the three of them knit together.
Thank you. Kaya, and then I'll come on to you, Chris. Kaya.
Obviously, you'll now have...
Sorry, Kaya from the Times.
Oh, right, hello.
Obviously, you'll now have a kind of a greater platform for your voice in kind of public debate. What are going to be your main priorities in speaking out into kind of public debate, speaking to government, for example, over whether it's particular policies or particular issues? What will be your priorities?
Okay. I think it's really important for the church to be able to make valuable comment into, if you like, into this political and the national sphere, obviously without becoming party political. So that sense of independence that the gospel gives us, I think, is vital. Because everything that we are called to say as a community of faith must grow from that relationship with the person of Christ. Now, that enables us as a church to, if you like, shine a light into the public sphere, into the political sphere, that I pray will call people together, that will enable us as a society to keep before our eyes the dignity of the human person at every point in life, to recognize the value of people from wherever they come, to recognize that every person has something that they can bring to the wider society. And it's those kinds of things that I think that the church needs to focus on. Because, just to take a little example of that, we read a lot and we experience a lot of challenges to people's mental health, for instance. And for us as the community of faith, to be able to encourage people to recognize their own value, to recognize the value of the relationships that they have with other people, to recognize that they have a place in this great adventure of life and the work of the world in which we live, is, I think, something the church can do to particular effect. It's just one example, but that's...
Thank you. Very quickly, Chris. Yes.
Chris Lamb.
Hello.
Yesterday, Pope Leo sent a message for World Day of Peace, warning about the use of language of faith being used to bless nationalism and used in political battles. Are you concerned about the rise of political parties in the UK who are gaining popularity on anti-migrant platforms and also using Christian language?
Well, Archbishop Bernard and I issued a statement actually on the 17th about that. As Archbishop Bernard, with his ecumenical interfaith Work, heading that department, and me for social justice. We issued a joint statement. Really pointing out that for us as a church community, our call is to do what we have always done, which is to persevere day by day, week by week, year by year, in proclaiming the gospel. Now, the gospel is ultimately attractive, and enabling the church community to persevere in that proclamation of the dignity of the human person, to continue to remind society that everybody, wherever they come from, has something that they contribute, is for me a very good way of answering some of the kind of tendencies that we're seeing. It's going back to what I was saying before. It's about shining the light of the gospel into a situation, which it will enable society to look at things in a different way. Now, sometimes that can be a slow game. It's not necessarily a quick win, but persevering in that route is, I think, a sure way forward.
Thank you. Benedict, and then Joe.
Benedict Capio,
Hello.
France 24 for our French and English worldwide channels. Congratulations on your appointment. Where were you and when did you find out that you had this new job? And also, what do you think will be your biggest learning curve?
Well, where was I? Funnily enough, I was in Rome. I was last weekend. As you know, we've been in this year of Jubilee, and at different weekends they've been having jubilees for different groups of people. And last weekend was the Jubilee for prisoners. So I went to Rome with a small number of our prison chaplains to celebrate the Jubilee for prisoners. And it was there I got a phone call, can you come and see me? And I said, I'm very sorry, but I'm in Rome. So it's one of those moments, you'll always remember where you were, you know, when something happened. Learning curves. Well, if I go back to something I said a little earlier on, the Diocese of Arundel and Brighton has the constituent elements of a diocese, and a diocese is an expression, it is a church. The bishop with priests and people, it is a church. The biggest learning curve I can see at the moment is one of scale and profile. So, you know, I can work away as a bishop quietly in the countryside of Sussex and the towns of Surrey, but the post here at Westminster is in a very, very different perspective from the people around you. Let's not put that very neatly, but you know, you're on a different stage, if you like. Someone used the word platform earlier on. It's a much bigger platform, and that's going to be rather new for me. And I look forward to it. As I say, I've been pinching myself all week. I look forward to that platform in a way. There is also a little bit of sense of apprehension about it, I'll be honest. I think if there wasn't, I'd be worried. But you know, I go back to what I said earlier on. Pope Leo has placed this trust in me, and as I said when I was told that the appointment had been made, this is the Holy Father's will. It is the will of God for me. I will give myself to it.
Thank you. Joe.
Could you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to your vocation?
My parents, both Catholics, my mother a convert. I have no brothers or sisters. When I was about 9, we had a most wonderful parish priest, and I was an altar server and all those things. And I thought one day, I wonder what it would be like to do what he does. And the thought didn't go away. at secondary school, I wasn't in a Catholic school, actually, it's an interesting little story. I'm very blessed. There's about 8 of us who were all at school together, and one of them, I was at school with him when we were 4, and we still meet quite regularly. And one of them, he's a retired GP now, and he said to me, when we were at school and you said you were thinking about becoming a priest, I thought you were absolutely crazy. So I was in a school where I wasn't particularly understood. I mean, in the 6th form, there were 2 Catholics in the 6th form. But this thought of priesthood never ever went away. And so I applied to Archbishop Cowderoy, who was then the Archbishop in Southwark, when I was in the first term of the upper 6th. And I left school in July and went to the seminary in August. So in one sense, it's rather straightforward. But there we are. Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah.
Hi there, my name's Norman from the Catholic Code.
Hello.
A bit more of a controversial question now. Regarding the Tridentine Latin Mass, during your time in Arundel and Brighton, many said you were a silent ally allowing your priests to celebrate the old rite. Can you clarify whether any change in policy is being considered in Westminster now? And how do you see the future provisions of those attached to the traditional Latin Mass within the Church in England and Wales?
Okay. In the Diocese of Arundel and Brighton, we have a relatively small number of priests who celebrate the old rite, if you want to call it that. And the amount that the provision of that is kind of what we need in the diocese. So when the new requirements came out, I did as we were asked to do, and I wrote to the Holy See and I said, this is our situation, and I'm asking for the permissions for this to continue, and it was granted. As I said earlier on, I'm brand new here, I have a lot to learn, I haven't even got my feet under the desk yet. So asking me about future policies is probably a bit early. But what I will say is that for anything in terms of pastoral need, you see what the need is, and then you do your best to answer it. But that requires, going back to earlier questions, that requires conversations, getting to know people, dialogue, learning what the situation is. As you will have seen from the CV, riding horses is my hobby. It's very important never to rush a fence.
Ruth. Sorry. Afterwards, but Ruth, go ahead.
Thanks for allowing me to ask a second question. Both your predecessors have, during their time here, and sometimes in their previous roles, had to face the ongoing issue of safeguarding. And I just wondered how you view that,
Right.
and what your views are on that as you move forward into this new role, and
Sure.
what challenges are you think it might present?
Yeah. As all of us in this room know, matters of safeguarding have been very serious in the life of the Church, and I wouldn't take away from that at all. Very serious matters. And over the years, the Catholic community in this country has learnt more and more about how those matters need to be addressed. And sparing Cardinal Vincent blushes, in recent years, the work that he's done in the safeguarding field to foster that's been really significant. Now, for myself, both in the armed forces and in Arundel and Brighton, I've done my best to ensure that we have very good safeguarding teams in our diocese, and I've fostered and supported their work. I attend the Safeguarding Commission in the Diocese of Arundel and Brighton during the course of the year. Now, I've also always been ready to meet with survivors. And we'll always be ready to meet with survivors. And like many, like my brother bishops, we recognize that although those conversations are not easy, they become part of our life. They become part of our pastoral ministry. That outreach and that welcome is important to me. And for those who wish to take up that opportunity to speak with me, that opportunity is always there. In my view, the commitment of the Catholic community in this country to safeguarding is clear. I think it's manifest that we are very committed to it, and I'm quite certain that looking into the future, the Bishops' Conference, the Bishops meeting together, and those who support us and help us to implement this vital ministry of safeguarding will continue to see it develop as it needs to. I think we're all committed to that. And I certainly am, and certainly committed to offering that opportunity to survivors. Yeah.
Thank you. Just right there.
Richard from Reuters News. Thanks for taking the question and also congratulations. The first one was just in terms of there's a small political movement around Christian nationalism, and I appreciate that the church is together and we can have already, of which the Catholic Church is part of, have already criticized the use of religious symbols for political influence. But I just wondered how would you approach that, especially as the Catholic Church in London, that this is where we've seen the most of that sort of movement.
Thank you. I mean, I'm certainly conscious from my experience, going back being south of the river again, and also in the Diocese of Arundel and Brighton. The Catholic community in this country brings together people from all nations. I mean, the parish of Woking in Arundel and Brighton, 73 nationalities in that parish in Surrey, which has the oldest existing Muslim community in Woking, in the country. So that sense of the international flavour, if you like, that the Catholic Church brings to this country is precious. And that requires, I think, us as a society to be open to all the good things that facilitates. And I think it's important for the Church to proclaim the value of that into what can sometimes be a rather more complex scenario. Yeah? So my experience of that kind of a community, which actually goes back to my days as a youngster in junior school, which is quite an international community there. I've always been at ease in it. It's not a challenge to me personally, but I think proclaiming that, it's back to the dignity of the human person, if you like. Continue to proclaiming that into the national, the political sphere is the way forward for us.
Thank you. And if I may, sorry, just in terms of the Pope Leo had any priorities for the church in England and Wales, or if you could kind of talk about that in case about Pope Leo's plans for the church in England and Wales.
Well, I think that one thinks of the task of the Holy Father at any point in history is again this continual proclamation of the gospel, and that is key. Some of the things that the Holy Father has said again about the dignity of the human person, speaking that into the political sphere at times, is again an example of, I think, the way that we need to be in this country too.
Thank you. Kaya.
Kaya from the Times again. When there are moments when, for example, the Church's position might clash with where public opinion sits, for example, I know the Cardinal spoke very rationally about assisted dying at a time when public opinion seems to be supporting it. And I know there was a tricky case in Arundel and Brighton with a priest who had said he wouldn't offer communion to an MP who was backing assisted dying, and I think the MP said he sort of wanted an apology over that case, for example. With that case in mind particularly, is that difficult when there's that clash, knowing how to sort of speak into those debates? Was that case a difficult one?
I mean, I wouldn't particularly want to comment on a particular case in this setting, but what I would say is that the church can always speak into the situation, provided as a Christian community we are authentic to ourselves. I can't pretend to be what I am not. I wouldn't want to. Neither can the community of the church. The issue is how we say things. And it goes back to relationship. It's about listening. It's about speaking truth in a way that is charitable, even if it might not be accepted. Again, going back to something I said a little earlier on, some of these things are, if you like, a slow game. But the church, as a Christian community, as a Catholic community in this country, we must continue to do what we believe and know that the Lord has asked us to do in season and out of season, to use that phrase.
Thank you. Right, we're going to just have time for a few more questions. So I've got 1, 2, 3. Is that it? Sorry, I can't see that.
There's one right down the back again.
One right down at the back.
The lady he was just asking.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, go for it.
As the new Prime-elect of England and Wales, when you look at the ordinary, how do you see its role in light of the clear commitment of the Holy See? And how could the Catholic Church in England and Wales best support the ordinary?
The ordinariate is not separate from the Catholic Church. The ordinariate is part of the Catholic Church. Neither is it a separate rite. It's a part of the community. And we are all of us together as part of the Catholic community involved in this same mission. It's not a separate entity in that sense. We're all engaged in the mission of the church. And so that support is mutual across those communities.
Thank you. Sorry, the lady from Reuters there at the back, I forgot your name.
In terms of the relationship between the Church of England and the Catholic Church, so we've had the king visit, hopefully earlier this year. I just wondered if we can expect a return of the farewell one. And also the Church of England is also due to get its first female archbishop. So I just wondered how would ecumenical relations be under your leadership?
Okay, thanks for that question. I've actually, sort of up until today, I guess, been chair of Churches Together in Surrey. And I've been blessed. It's been a real privilege, actually, to be an ecumenical canon of both Chichester and Guildford cathedrals for the last 10 years or so. So there's some experience there, and certainly in the armed forces, where we work very ecumenically. So the ecumenical sphere is not strange to me, and I'm blessed to have very good working relationships with church leaders in Surrey and in Sussex. I've met with the Archbishop of Canterbury. I was in a call with her a couple of weeks ago now, matters various relating to social justice. We have a joint meeting of Catholic bishops and Anglican bishops every other year. And actually, in fact, the two of us are on the same table for one of those events. So we know one another a little, and I look forward to meeting with her and building that relationship. Yeah.
Thank you. Joe, Ruth, and then finally that. So 3 left. Go, Joe.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I've been very blessed now to make 31 pilgrimages to the Holy Land over the years. I have friends in Bethlehem. I have a very dear friend who's a Benedictine nun in Israel, and quite, a certain amount of communication going backwards and forwards through these previous very difficult years for both Israel and Gaza. Yes, I have a great fondness for the church in the Holy Land. I took a pilgrimage of armed forces personnel to the Holy Land a few years ago. I was going to take Arundel and Brighton, but then recent events have made that impossible, and I look forward to returning. I think as a community in this country, of course, we have a very strong involvement with the Holy Land through the coordination that Bishop Nicholas Hudson oversees. And that's a very significant moment actually for the Church in the Holy Land. They greatly appreciate the presence of people from this country there. For me, and maybe this is coming from being a member of the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre, it's about prayer, presence, and financial support. That's what the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre do. So continuing prayer for our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land, and then being a presence to them. And it's that presence that I know is so greatly valued, and I would most certainly want to foster that into the future.
Great. Thank you, Ruth.
A document on women in the diaconate has just been published, and a lot of women in the church were disappointed, although my reading of it is that there is a slight door left open there, talks about not at this time. And I just wondered, do you see that as significant, that phrase, in the document, and what is your view on that issue, enhancing women's leadership in the church?
Right. I think there is a distinction, I know there is a distinction between leadership and orders. So if I look at the Diocese of Arundel and Brighton, the key positions of Director of Education, Chief Operating Officer, Head of Communications, a lot of these roles in our diocese are held by women. And I rejoice in that. Now, whether, I'm with the document, not at this time. But that doesn't mean that the women in our community can't hold significant positions and be involved in leadership and in the guidance of the community in various ways. And I certainly rejoice in that and would want to foster it. But there is that distinction between leadership and involvement and all the many roles that are available, and building those up and making more things possible. There is a distinction between that and the sacrament of orders.
Thank you. Final question, I have.
Brendan Thompson, Word on Fire and Catholic Voices. In April, the Bible Society released a report called The Quiet Revival. And I guess contrary to expectation, there's growing spiritual openness, but particularly for Catholicism, particularly among 18 to 35-year-olds. Have you seen evidence of this yourself? And what does it mean that you're taking on leadership in this time when it looks like there's a bigger openness to faith and Catholicism?
No, thank you. I mean, we do speak about a quiet revival. That's true. I would say I'm quietly cautious. A statistician would say, let's see it happen for 10 years, That said, certainly in the Diocese of Arundel and Brighton, this Easter, just gone, we had 100 more adult baptisms than we had the year before. To the extent that I think next year they will have to have 2 rites of election, because Arundel and Brighton's cathedral is not as big as Westminster's. They're going to need 2 rites of election to get everybody in. So that is certainly the case, that we are seeing a new interest in the life of the gospel, a new interest in the life of the church. It's definitely the case. As I mentioned earlier on, I think in our time together here today, there are a number of different reasons for that, and we could spend hours unpacking them. But it is true that a number of people are looking to faith and to the gospel in a new way. I rejoice in that, and I'm quite certain that the Diocese of Westminster has been open to this kind of new movement in the life of the church and the country, and the welcome is there.
Thank you. Okay, that brings a formal close to the press conference. Archbishop-elect Richard will now be going next door just for a few broadcast interviews. But before we go, I will give the last word to Archbishop Richard, and I'm sure he was going to...
So thank you all for being here. It's been lovely to meet with you. As I said at the beginning, there are a couple of familiar faces in the room, but most of you I don't know, and it's been lovely to meet with you here today. Thank you for giving your time. I'm also mindful that there are some watching this on social media and all those wonderful things. So thank you, those of you joining remotely, for being with us as well today. I look forward to meeting with you again in the future, and may God bless you all. Thank you.